what will make a human being change very deeply? This has been a great problem for those people who are concerned with the transformation of man. What makes us change? If you put that question to yourself seriously and ask with all depth of your being, what will make you change? Will an external event bring about a crisis in your life and that forces you to do some radical thinking change? A death in the family, an incident or an event or a happening that is devastating, psychologically as well as physically. Will that bring about deep change? Or must you go through great pain, great sorrow, great agony brought about by external events and forces a human being to alter his course, his drive, his direction, his selfishness, his limited, brutal thinking? We've had several wars. Most of us perhaps have lived through 2 wars, devastating wars. Millions have been killed. Think of the misery, the confusion, the enormous sorrow of those people who have had great losses, not only physical losses, but their sons destroyed. And apparently, superficial events, however great they are, doesn't seem to bring about a freedom. Say, this cannot happen again. You understand? So, I'm asking, you as well have asked, this has been a question which we have considered many, many times. Will external events change man? That's one problem. That is, superficial events. And apparently, that has not changed man. Change in the sense we mean a real, deep transformation of the selfish drive identified with groups, nations, with beliefs, dogmas, religion, all the rest of it. And apparently, please follow this, apparently some superficial event, like the death of one's husband, wife, children, does bring, through great pain and sorrow, a certain change in oneself. I do not know if you have not noticed it. Does that mean we must depend on external events, death, war, somebody leaving you, and so on, so on, so on? External devastating events, will that change you? Which means that you must depend on outward things which will then put you through great agony and suffering, and out of that you come, bringing about perhaps a deep mutation. Right? It seems to me, seems to us, that that's the most appalling thing to even to say it. That we must go through suffering to bring a change. That's inconceivable. But yet that's what happens, apparently. It's like a man who is driving a car rather carelessly, kills others and perhaps survives, and after that he says, I'm going to be awfully careful how I drive. He's intelligent after the event. Is it possible to be intelligent before the event? You understand my question? Intelligent meaning not become more clever in this instinctual survival of selfishness, of their drive, of desire, and so on, so on. But that intelligence that is born out of the perception that superficial events does not fundamentally change man, but that change must come totally inwardly, without any pressure, without any event. To perceive that is part of intelligence. No? That I do not depend to perceive the truth, that if I depend on outward pressure, outward events, which puts me through a great deal of sorrow and anxiety, I will either become cynical, bitter, or escape into some form of entertainment. So in that, there is no deep change. To see that is part of intelligence. The materialists, the communists, the totalitarian people say, change the outward events, then man changes. But that's been tried through millennia. Right? And apparently man has not changed. And also there is this this statement made by several gurus and teachers in the East and perhaps in the West, that surrender yourself. Then all your problems are solved. You again surrender to something outside. or surrender to something which you have created. You follow all this? I wonder if you understand. Please, are we understanding each other? This is very important. After the question of that gentleman yesterday, he said, I've listened to you for so many years, and I have not changed. I am where I started out. You know, to hear such a statement, you cry inwardly. You understand? I wonder how many of you cried inwardly. And what will change him or you or another? Is it, as we said, an external event, devastating, which brings about sorrow, and then that sorrow, if it is deep, it shatters everything that you have had. And then perhaps say, I can't live this way anymore. See, again, depending on an external event. And external event can be vast. Wars, earthquakes, and so on, external events. Realizing that these religious, can I use the word exploiters? These religious exploiters, with your consent, I'm using that word, says, give yourself over, surrender. You understand what the implications of it? Surrender naturally to the Guru, to the man who says surrender. But inwardly, do you eliminate this drive, this self-centeredness, and so on, so on? You understand? Again, the same phenomenon, which is outward pressure, now you are exerting inward pressure to give it to somebody else. Have you understood this? Huh? Can we go on from there? Now, do you listen to all this? That outward pressure is not going to change, right? Inward, giving yourself over to a presence or a reality, to God, to this or to that, is still the desire which drives you to forget yourself. But the self is still there, only covered up. So, do you listen to these statements? Right? Or it doesn't mean anything at all. So perhaps the root of the matter lies there. Intellectually, verbally, you see reasonably, logically, what the statements we have made just now, very clear. Unless you want to change the words, you can change it. But the essence of it is that the outward pressure through sorrow and the inward pressure to escape from yourself, right? Which again is another form of. Do you listen to this? So that you see the truth of it, that under, whether it be pressure from outside or from inside, there is no change. to see that, to hear that, and see that fact. That is intelligence.
We have our speaker with us, and I'm facing a challenge. The challenge is to introduce him. The challenge is because to introduce a person who is multi-talented, multifaceted is very difficult. It's difficult as to where to start and how to continue. That's the challenge. Our speakers, Mr. Gautama G, if I'm not wrong, G stands for Gopala Ratnam, and both his parents were at TS, and I had the privilege of meeting his parents, Mr. Gopal Ratnam and Parvati Ji, both of them. And Mr. Gautama, and popularly he is called by the students and his teachers, popularly he is called as Gautama Anna. Those who don't know, Anna means brother. So I would prefer to call him today Anna, because I love this word Anna, and Akka. Akka means sister. So Gautama Anna is alumni of IIT Madras. So after completing his BTech, he worked as a scientist in the most reputed and famous atomic research center known as BARC, or Baba Atomic Research Center, for 5 years. After that, for 10 long years, he was engineering consultant. But as destiny says that he was not made for doing atomic research, but I think he was made for doing research on education. That was the destiny. He left everything. He joined the school, and he was KFI school, and he was the principal and director of the school for 21 long years. It's pretty long years. 21 years. He was the principal and director of the school, KFI. In between, he was also the director of Sahedri Education Center, located near Pune. But while he was involved with the school, he was also instrumental in the evolution of another institution, education institution of KFI, which right now he is sitting there, that is known as Pathsala School. And he's the director of Polar Center for Learning of KFI. It's a beautiful campus. I had the opportunity of going to that Pathsala school. It's a completely eco-friendly environment wherever you go. I still remember my tour to that Pathsala. But one thing I would like to share with you, that even I'm not sure if Gautama Anna remembers it. Don't know if he remembers it or not. It was a long back, I would say, maybe 15, 17, 16 years back or 17 years back. I, along with few readers from Morissa, went along with Mr. J.K. Patnaik to KFI, Vasant Vihar. But before that, we stayed at T.S. Adair. So while staying at T.S. Adair, we thought of visiting the school, which was then at Damodar Garden in Besant Avenue. So we went there with a group of around 10, 12 people from Orissa, all from Orissa. We went there, but there was this, this thing was going on in our mind that we should also have a K school in this part of India, which is the eastern part of India. We always thought of having a K school, because unfortunately, the eastern part of India till now doesn't have a K school. East of India, Western India has, Eastern, I mean, the Northern India has, Southern India has, but Eastern India doesn't have. So we always have this urge, why not have a school? We will try to have a school. So we went there to have a feeling of K school. So that was my first visit to any K school. I went there, but before going, we met Gautama Anna in his room. I still remember the room and everything. So we went there, we sat there, we had a discussion with him. So one of us asked him, we want to open a school in Odisha. Those who don't know where is Odisha, Odisha is, I mean, from Odisha, I mean, those who are from overseas, Odisha is the eastern part of India. Okay. So we want to have a, can't we have a school in Odisha? So Mr. Gautama Anna, rather. First thing he said, of course you can, but tell me among you, who has got a heart? Who has got a heart? This is the first thing he asked. One of us said, all of us have. He said, no, I'm not talking of that hat. He continued, he said, to have a Krishnamurti school, you need to have a heart full of passion, full of compassion. Then only you can have a Krishnamurti school. Then he continued. He said, to have a Krishnamurti school, the school first must come inside your heart. It should get designed in your heart. You should prepare the soil of having a school in your heart. Then the outward structure will come automatically. I still remember his words. And whenever this topic of school comes, the first thing I remember, who has got a heart? So with this introduction, I would like to request Gautama Anna, who has a passion for education, who is strongly involved with the evolution of Krishnamurti school. And without taking much time, I would request Gautama Anna to address us. Thank you.
Thank you, Shomitra. Thank you for remembering that conversation that we had in Chennai. Thank you for your very kind words and for the invitation to join this conclave. I'd also like to introduce myself as somebody who's still in the kindergarten of life, somebody who's like a blade of grass on the roadside, and who has been extremely fortunate to have the privilege of working in a school which is anchored in the teachings and to attempt education in the light of the teachings. It's as simple as that, with all its struggles. And I must say, this journey, I couldn't have done anything better in my life than work in a Krishnamurti school. So having said that, I think it's wonderful that the Katak Center is organizing a conclave of this kind, and I see people from different parts of India, different parts of the world. And when Shomitra was saying that it doesn't feel like we are only local, I think the pandemic has given a big push to the notion that the local is the global. When Krishnamurti says, you are the world, and I think often in our own context, with our own peculiarities of context, particularities of the context, we sometimes see the distinctions between the local and the global. But the local is the global, has come in a big way. Thanks to Zoom now, It is visually possible to be together as well. It's possible to listen to each other, and it's possible to think together, if that phrase can be used. Uh, it is quite a challenge and quite difficult to say things in a gathering where there are individuals who have some knowledge of Krishnamurti, who have studied Krishnamurti. It is a difficult thing for several reasons. One is that Krishnji himself has spoken so extensively about so many facets of human existence. It's quite remarkable that all of it is today available, easily accessible, thanks to the internet, to everybody anywhere in the world. And his teachings are quite profound, teachings are quite radical, they're extremely challenging. At the same time, they're deeply human, and there is an extraordinary connect that one can have when one listens to Krishnaji. At the same time, in the 15-minute talk that we just listened to, I listened to it a little bit earlier, and I listened to it again. The listening experience was completely fresh and new when I listened again. This never ceases to surprise me because when we we often say, "I know this, I'm aware of this," right? We say that uh, I have read about conditioning, or I've read about religion, I've read about uh, the problem of education. But I think in today's world, if I may slightly digress a little bit, there's an enormous, beautiful challenge as well. And the challenge is one of synchronicity, if I may use that word. You see, in the present world, information is available all over. I can pick it up when I want. In America, I can pick it up in the morning, and in India, I can pick it up in the night, or vice versa. And two human beings can look at this question or look at a piece of insight or piece of reading or video at different times. And the movement that their minds may make, the explorations that they may enter into, may be similar, may not be that different, because we're all human beings. We all have a background, and from that background, we approach whatever we approach. But a conversation in real time, like now we are together, you're able to listen to me, I'm able to see your faces, and you're able to see my face in the background, is quite a challenge. Is there a difference between the way we listen to somebody in the moment and the way we listen to the person later? For instance, I can have a conversation in the classroom with some student or at the dining table, which I have plenty of conversations. Or I meet a colleague or somebody, visitor comes and we have a discussion. And you say something, or the other person says something. What is the difference between listening to that person in that moment and considering what the person has said later? This is quite a challenge. Today's world of technology offers us synchronous and asynchronous tools. So you can say, if you have a message which has come, a mail which has come, a message which has come, a missed call, or WhatsApp message, or some other social media message, you can choose when you look at it. At the same time, the same technology provides us with tools where we say, We are together in this moment. We are sharing this space and time. Space, yes, the space of this earth. It's no longer just the space of Cuttack or Pathshala or Chennai or Varanasi or New York or Los Angeles. It is the space, it's the earth space. And we can be wherever we are, but we can be synchronously together. So this poses a very interesting challenge as I'm seeing in my own life. So I'm going to I'm going to share some thoughts about conditioning with you. And I won't speak too long. One of the things one learns as a teacher is that after 10 minutes, it's very difficult for people to continue listening to somebody, okay? So, well, one can go through with that ritual, but so I might stop short. It's not because I don't have more to say, but I'd like to have a conversation with you. Welcome to ask your questions. And all I can say is, I don't believe there are any wrong questions. So please feel free to ask any question that you may have, and maybe I'll respond to it. Maybe I'll give it a pass, and maybe somebody else can respond to it as well. K uses the word conditioning in a widely encompassing manner and covers many aspects of human life. We can call habituated action as condition, right? And I think that would be the simplest level at which we can understand it. Patterns of thought and feeling can be called conditioning. Patterns of thought are easily recognized as conditioning. Do we also recognize patterns of feeling as conditioning? Maybe we do. The use of tools of logic to solve problems can be called conditioning. Can logic be called conditioning? Really? But isn't that how we are supposed to approach problems? We hear in today's video Krishnamurti asking if an external factor can change one deeply. And he also very beautifully raises this question of saying, is it not terrible to say that one has to suffer to change? Meaning suffering brings about change. For those of us who are been familiar with K, this is not a new question. We have heard him speak of the urgency of change. He has asked, can we reincarnate now? He has asked. Oh, what a profound phrase that is. We have heard him say in the past that the past and the future are both contained in the now. And if the future is to be at all different from the past, the action has to be in the present. Fine. We have heard K point out that while there's chronological time, psychological time is a creation of thought. We have heard all this. Some of us have heard. I wonder if there are people here who may not have heard some of these things or read Krishnamurti. And it doesn't matter. Some of us may have read some things, some may have read some more things. Some of us may be much younger, some of us may be much older. So we may have different shades of experience and knowledge about these questions. And in the synchronous conversation that we are attempting today, thanks to this conclave which has been set up, the big question is, can we be in conversation today as if we are doing it for the first time? Or will this conversation happen only as if we have had it many times before? We all know about conditioning. We all know about the impact of conditioning and the effort of human race and human intelligence has been to somehow be free of conditioning. So, is there a different way of approaching this? As we are sitting together here, as we are discussing together, is there another way of approaching this? Now, let me share a story with you. Many years ago, I think it was the early 2000s, one of the most important things that I have been doing in my life in school has been to have conversations with the young, with colleagues in small groups. I have done this in the school. I continue to do that in Pathshala. I feel the conversational space allows us to speak as equals. And I have been surprised and rewarded with extraordinary nuggets of wisdom simply articulated by 10-year-olds, profound articulations from students who are 16, 17, and uh, genuine questions which have been shared by colleagues, which parents and parents. So this was one conversation with the grade 11, 12 students, and many conversations would be initiated by students. And one of them, one young lady, said, "You know, I love speed," she said. And then immediately that got everybody excited. She said, "I love to ride on a motorcycle with the wind in my face, on my face." And everybody was saying yes. Then somebody was saying how they would deal with the traffic lights and how they would, what time of the day the roads would be clear, and if they got caught, what they would do, etc., etc. And then she continued. She said, "You know, one of my cousins, he died in a road crash, and he was going very fast." And she said, "But I still love speed." So we try to understand what is it that she's saying. Okay, what are the questions she's asking? What is she bringing up for conversation, for discussion, for consideration? And as we all listen, one of the things I've done is ask people what are they hearing, what are they saying, what is this person speaking about? And people spoke about how she loves speed and how she enjoys the thrill of it, adrenaline. And then I was asking, but isn't she saying something more? What is she saying? Something more. Then as we discussed, we discovered she's saying, even the death of a person who's close to me hasn't taken away the thrill of speed. She's really asking, how can anything change in my understanding of life, in the things I love, in the things I want to do? Even the death of somebody doesn't provide a change. And that was a shock to hear. So when Krishnamurti, and when I heard him speak in this little beautiful piece today, says, do we have to have suffering to change? This young person seemed to be saying that even suffering, even pain, even death doesn't seem to change anything. My approach to life hasn't changed. So at a very poignant moment where it was possible to consider the real questions of life, that our conditioning, our approach, the program by which we live are sometimes quite deep and it's not very easy to bring about a change. And suffering doesn't seem to end that change, doesn't seem to end that pattern. And in my understanding, Krishnamurti doesn't seem to be talking only about ending one form of conditioning or another form of conditioning, one habit or another habit. So, if we were to proceed a little bit further, today we have the onset of artificial intelligence in a big way. It's coming in. It has already come in, actually. It has been sitting outside our door for a while, and now it's inside. Every small thing, there are devices which will sweep our house and actually take away all the dust and actually leave certain kinds of things and take certain kinds of things, clean the corners. Uh, we have machines, largely which are manufacturing cars, which are manufacturing other devices which human beings use. We have machines which answer questions. A lot of customer care has been made into machines now. And they decide, they give you the answers. And if you don't find an answer, and if you're lucky, I'm saying you're lucky, finally you'll be able to talk to a person. Otherwise, it's the machine that's telling you, giving you information. You're being. So the program, there's a program which runs things. This has been highlighted a great deal in the self-driving cars. The program which designed. So human beings program the machine. The machine follows certain instructions. The series, complicated series of instructions. If there is a vehicle which is 30 feet in front, you slow down. If the distance shrinks, then you apply the brake. If your fuel is low, you look for the nearest petrol bunk and whatever charge you put charge up, whatever you need to do, electrical and other cars. So self-drive. But there's been a very interesting question. The car is going along on the road. It meets 2 or 3 different situations. It meets a bunch of 4 or 5 people who are crossing the pedestrian crossing, and there's a child playing on the roadside, and there's a cliff over which the car will fall if there's a wrong decision. So what kind of decision would the car make? This is not just in the realm of a moral dilemma. It is in the realm of programming. This is a serious question. So will we say the young life is worth much more protecting than the older people who are crossing the road? Therefore, car will decide that better to hit the older people. I say, no, will there be the moral principle that, look, you can't take another person's life, whatever the situation. So it's better you go over the cliff and take your chances rather than kill people, innocent people. Very difficult questions. But in some way, this throws us back on our own conditioning, how we make decisions. I'll give you an example. I see this in school all the time. I'm sure you see it in your life and you have seen it wherever you have been. When you enter a room and our eyes look for a place to where to go, we seem to be operating on a pattern of which person we approach, whose company we want, whose company we want to avoid. The pattern operates, the conditioning operates. It's a fact. And it's reinforced by the fact that I do it once, I do it a second time, and if I do it 100 days in a year, then that becomes a pattern. The pattern is that I have to go and sit in that particular seat every single day of my life. So, one of the interesting things now I'm sharing with you what I have done with this kind of an understanding. It occurred to me that it is not the purpose of education to make sure that people sit in the same spot every day with the same group of neighbors. It can be very oppressive, huh? Can't it be? Imagine not having the freedom to move around and sit with somebody else. So we brought in a principle called randomization. Somebody would just shuffle the pack and say, you sit here, you sit here. It can be a student, it can be a teacher, and you use different places to sit. But let me tell you, the fact that my mind seeks a certain kind of approach all the time is real. It's a fact. Now, my intelligence doesn't know. Do I see this as a pattern operating? Or do I see it as, no, you drive on the left side of the road, like that you go and sit next to the person who's your dear friend, who threatens you least, who smiles at you, in whose company you feel grand and big. Fantastic. So you find there are people in classrooms, in schools, and colleges, everywhere, workplaces. You have a hierarchy which is established. Somebody dark in color, somebody speaks very polished English, and somebody doesn't speak very polished English. So little micro environments get set up based on the fact that we simply say it is okay to be within the realms of your condition. It's okay. You must get the kind of food that you're comfortable with. You must get the kind of clothes that you're comfortable with. You must have a house which is you must be comfortable with. We had a very serious challenge when we opened Pathshala. That we have water, globally there's a crisis in water. But this campus, which is located in the middle of 5 water tanks, huge water tanks, natural water tanks, centuries old, has water at 20 feet. We don't know what to do with that. And so if we set up the regular kind of sanitation, we would be polluting the groundwater. And that's what we would know. And that's what we would do. Because that's how everybody does it. That's the norm. But we were very lucky. We had a friend who had been working in Brockwood Park, Dagmar Albrecht. She came over and we were discussing. And she investigated the whole idea of dry composting toilets. And now, to cut a long story short, we have only dry composting toilets. So you see, growing aware of the existing pattern and questioning it seems to be a space that is accorded also to the human being. But at the same time, this is fraught with danger. We are scared of doing this. We can think intellectually about these matters, but to actually try something different, it is quite scary. It's quite frightening. What if I fall flat on my face? What if it doesn't work? What if people say, how could you do this foolish thing? So I'd much rather avoid that kind of a situation and therefore play it safe. Therefore, not ask the question, therefore, not investigate. Right? So you see how conditioning operates. So our conditioning, our program, our algorithm makes us choose the path where we will not hear somebody's criticism. Criticism is not welcome, it's hurtful. It causes pain to the idea of the self. There's been fantastic wisdom. Kabir says, Ninda Kadiyare Rakhiye Angana Kuti Samay. That person who finds fault, who criticizes, who points out things to you, keep him near you, him or her. Build a little hut. Take care of that person. Because in listening to the words of that person, Bina pani sabun bina mana nirmal ho jaye. Without soap and without water, your mind and your consciousness will get purified. But this is not something we welcome. See, it's not a context of welcoming. So when Krishnamurti says, will suffering be the only way? Will life and this knocks on will that be the only thing that brings about a change? Or is there a way of understanding our conditioning and can there be an apprehension of what's actually happening? To see, to meet this, to meet our conditioning, to see that. I think he uses the word, are we serious about it? That's quite interesting to hear, right? Are we serious about it? He says, I can't live like this anymore. Now that position doesn't come that easily. I'm not saying it should come. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it doesn't come that easily. we feel diffident. That's also part of our conditioning. We're not sure if there's a breakthrough possible. So are we willing to launch into an exploration where there's no guarantee of success, where there's no guarantee of an achievement, no guarantee that we will reach somewhere? Is it possible to do that? I think I've spoken quite long, right? So anybody has any thoughts, any questions? I don't know. I have no way of winding this down or something of the kind. I'm open. It's an ongoing, flowing dialogue, I hope. So I have shared some thoughts with you about conditioning, about programming, about algorithms of life. I suspect that the two earlier speakers have also spoken in their own meteor about this. They have explored this in their own way. I'm sorry I could not come last 2 days. I've been very busy. Today all the teachers are here in Pathshala, so I have been working very hard last 2 days with many little things. So I could not be present. My apologies for that. So I don't know what they've spoken about. So I'm taking a risk in saying what I'm saying. I run the risk of saying very similar things to what they have spoken about. But it doesn't matter what they have said. This is what I have to say. So I can only share this with you. So would you like to ask any questions, make any observations, then we can take it from there. Is that all right? Soumitra Nandini, is that all right?
Yeah, yes, Gautamanna, if anyone has any questions, anything, they can ask directly, or they can, as we are doing it for the last 2 days, we can put it in the chat box. So whichever is convenient for you. Dev has already raised his hand. Yes, Dev, please.
Dave, you are muted. Will you please
Wait,
unmute?
just a minute. Yes, he can unmute. Yeah.
Yeah. Sir, I'm asking this question as I'm asking myself and asking the people of this group who are in this conclave today. And especially you, because you've been with case teachings for many years, been a principal, been a director, been a foundation member, and very much a part of Krishnamurti schools. How much of us in the Krishnamurti world are conditioned by Krishnamurti's teachings? We always talk about conditioning, but we never talk about our own conditioning in the K world with regard to, because we have listened to Krishnamurti, read his books, listened to his tapes for many years. So how much, in your experience, do you feel that the K world is also conditioned with K's teachings? And if so, then what do we do with it? Oh, sir.
Gautamanna, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I beg your pardon. So yes, I think in the question lies a distinction between the K world and the not K world. I think it's good to go back to that question. We don't know what Krishnamurti's world was like. His famous statement in Ohio before his death, he said, nobody knows what went in his body. I think it's a mystery. It is something that we don't know. He was the man who walked in our midst. He was a man who could be seen talking to people on the road. He sat and gave talks. And yet there was something extraordinarily different about him, but you don't know what that is. There are people who are drawn to this either because they were searching, they were seeking, or because they came across Krishnamurti in the course of their associations. and found some of the things he said very important. The complete putting aside of authority, the complete value for the individual. I'm sure these things must have touched many of us. Do we get conditioned by what we experience? We are all prone to being conditioned by what we experience. So we must accept that. For instance, if I have a cup of coffee without sugar, um, um, there are people who can't take coffee with sugar. They don't like it. It tastes terrible. They say you can't taste the coffee. There are others who can't have coffee without sugar. They feel this is not coffee. So you see, conditioning operates in strange ways. So are we conditioned by Krishnamurti? I would change that question a little. Is the K world? I don't know what the K world is. The individuals who come to the teachings, whatever that means, the extraordinary questions that Krishnamurti asked, to the possibility for human beings for fundamental transformation that he spoke about. If we read Krishnamurti and make it into words, thoughts to be used in our communication, then we are conditioned because we use it the way we use everything else. We use it logically, we use it defensively, we use it to score a point. In that case, people are conditioned and the same conditioning operates. When Krishnamurti says, there are so many of his statements, you are the world and the world is you. It's a statement. Is it a conditioning by which can I get conditioned by this statement? Or can I get conditioned by the words? So this is how I would understand this. If one is deeply exploring this question, saying this man is saying something which I don't understand, let me deeply try to understand it. I find in Krishnamurti's teachings that the logic of the words takes you up to a point. And then one discovers that there's a leap which he seems to take, which, while deeply uh, connected with the essential, it can't be just caught in that logical ground. It can't be borrowed, you know. So if one is aware of the fact that one has a tendency to borrow uh, words, one has a tendency to quote somebody because that makes one feel confident about what one is saying. The words wise, using wise words, and I find I have a collection of wise words from Krishnamurti, which I can use and which I can speak to people about, and which I can, use as a way of countering what other people are saying about other things. Then I'm using whatever I have understood in a way which many people use many things. It becomes a tool in our hands. I don't know if Krishnamurti can be reduced to a tool. That's why I think he's not left any method even in the schools. And his challenge has been to discover who we are, what we are, understand, find out how to lead our lives in the light of the teachings. So I think that's a so do we want to walk the road in the light of the teachings where every moment we are ordinary human beings observing ourselves, observing life around ourselves, trying to understand deeply what's happening, being in touch with the fact of what's happening. In that case, one may not be using Krishnamurti's teachings in a conditioned manner. Otherwise, it doesn't matter whatever it is, whether we use physics or whether we use science or mathematics, use any set of words or any set of aphorisms you can use in a manner which is driven by the forces, the desires of our life, the avoidances of our life. So I don't know if I've met your question. I hope I have.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dev. Now, we will take a question from the chat box, then we will come to Balram. There are two more questions. Hemant, would you like to ask your question? It's a single line question. Okay, I will read it out. Hemant is asking, how do we decondition?
You see, this is an earnest question. And I think people ask this question. How do I do this? How do I do that? How do I ride the cycle? Well, you get onto the cycle and you ride it. Person is actually asking, how do I ride the cycle without falling down? And maybe one can say, well, John Holt said this very beautifully. He said, you learn to play the cello only by playing the cello. If somebody were to ask, how do I produce beautiful music with the cello? You can say, you play the cello, you'll produce beautiful music. Will I produce music? Everybody knows that the first time you pick up the cello and play it, you're not going to produce good music. It's going to squeak like crazy. Right? So, how do I engage with this fear? Does fear stop me from trying something new? There's a fantastic story about this cellist called Pablo Casals in the West. Somebody, after a fantastic, inspired conference, performance in Vienna, somebody walked up backstage and said, that was divine. I would give my life to play like that. Pablo Casals answered in 2 words. He said, I did. So, to see the fact that I'm conditioned is more important than trying to eliminate it. Krishnamurti seems to suggest that in the seeing is the ending. So, this is something that one can consider. Is that really so? Or are we looking for method? He also said, never ask anybody how. He says they will tell you and then you are finished. He doesn't leave you room for anything other than exploring and discovering for yourself and for myself. He doesn't leave room for anything else.
Thank you. Balram? But yes, you can go ahead.
Yeah. Good morning, friends. Sir, I have been, stuck with this word transformation. What it comes to me is that how do I know that I have not been transformed? Because the changes what I see in myself, is it a transformation or it is just it is on the the overly or the the normal changes happen. So just to cite an example, because this is a Christmas Eve, so if I would not be here, I would be with some friends and doing something else. So these changes, if I consider that this is the merely little bit changes here and there, and there is no transformation, then I have got a 2 question here. Isn't that K, or for that matter, when we use this transformation, I'm becoming ambitious about I will become something which I am not, or that transformation and an illusion which I am pursuing. One. And two is that how do I know that whether that transformation has happened yet or not? Because I think I'm pursuing an maybe it could be a fact to somebody, but to me sounding it is an illusion, because what I see changes in myself. Why it is because that is what I can recognize. So is the transformation can also be recognized by the mind? Thank you.
Just Gautamana, related to this question, there is another question in the chat box. Maybe it will be easy for you to address both this question. There is another question from Rajendra Sharma. He's asking, how is insight related to transformation? If it will be good, then you can address both this question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Krishnamurti is, I mean, several things he has said, but one of his most, I found one of his statements very telling. He said, understanding what is transforms what is. So your question, I'm connected to transformation. How will I know I'm transformed? I can see some small changes. You know, I used to wear the left shoe first, and now I wear the right shoe. Okay. I used to sit hunched, and now I'm sitting straighter. I used to get very irritated whenever people repeated their questions, and now I'm able to listen with patience. So, is this not transformation? This seems to be change of some kind. What is this change, and what is the connection between change and transformation? And will I know if I am a transformed human being? Right? Will I know I am a transformed human being? That seems to be your question.
Yes.
Now, yeah. Okay, thank you. So, there is a story which I heard from Professor Krishna once. It left an impression in my mind. He was with Krishnamurti in Brockwood Park, and a visitor came along and said, "Oh, you have a fine thing going here, haven't you?" He looked at the beautiful Brockwood Park school and spoke very eloquently about it. So Krishnamurti listened to him quietly, he didn't say anything. Then later Krishna seems told him, don't worry, I know you don't have that kind of a feeling. Krishnamurti said, "No, sir. Let me watch." So he watched himself very carefully for a couple of days. He then came back to Krishna. I have observed. It's not like that. I'm not holding Brockwood Park with a sense of pride, with a sense of accomplishment, which this man seems to say. So if a man like Krishnamurti did not assume or did not, it was a living thing for him. If somebody said something, he listened carefully and he could examine it and observe himself to find out if there was truth in it or not. Maybe there's a pointer there. Maybe there's a pointer that, you know, what is my consciousness like at the moment when I'm talking to you, as I'm answering your question? Am I speaking it from the point of view of somebody who knows exactly what transformation is and who's choosing to give you an idea about transformation? Or is it such that somebody is engaging with this question and opening it out a little bit more and leaving you to figure this out for yourself? Because I don't know the exact answer to your question. But I do have another question. Why is it important for me to know whether I'm transformed or not? You follow? I hope you don't feel offended with this question. Why is it important for me to know? Do I want to? Is it like a bit of status? Is it like a bit of accomplishment that I want to have, saying, aha, my life has been well led. I have use this opportunity to become a transformed human being. I want that satisfaction because there is deep uncertainty in my heart. There is deep restlessness in my heart. There is um, discontent inside. And it's very painful. You know, in one of the times when I used to sit behind the camera in Vasanta Vihar, I walked up to Krishnamurti and I was in a state of deep discontent. And I asked him, sir, what does one do with discontent? He said, look at it, sir, look at it. He almost brushed it off. You know, he just left me with my discontent. Look at it. The discontent was real, and I'm glad I could articulate it correctly and clearly to him. But what's to be done with that? It's a fact. It's painful. I don't know in my life whether I'm leading the good life. Am I seizing this opportunity of being a human being on this planet? Am I seizing it fully? And Krishnamurti says, don't chase anybody. Don't look for accomplishment. Don't look for somebody anointing you as a saint or a sage or a transformed human being. Look at yourself very deeply. Stay with the fact. And there's a movement. Move from fact to fact. So I don't know if we should get caught with the word transformation even. He's speaking about a phenomenon at that level. But we may not be able to ground it in the manner in which you're seeking an answer, sir. I hope I have met your question. I hope you're not feeling offended with my way of meeting this question.
Thank you. We are taking questions from chat box. Then we will come to Ravi Shankarji. Shaurima, would you like to ask the question directly? Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So I just wanted to explore with you how conditionings of thought and conditionings of feelings, as you were referring to, how they're related to one another. Are they mutually exclusive or one spring from the other? I was just confused about this.
Sir, if somebody says some rude words, or if one is traveling in a public bus in India, or you're waiting for a bus and somebody pushes you very hard, what do you feel? And at that time, is it thought that's operating, or is it just feeling that's operating? A sense of outrage, a sense of anger, a sense of injustice, a sense of being treated badly. And are they very different? The feeling is coming because I've been programmed. I won't be pushed around. Somebody who's living in the middle of a very crowded locality is pushed around every day. Probably it will not be mean too much to that person. I have seen people when I've traveled in the Bombay trains, completely oblivious to the fact that they're being pushed around, and when train gets emptied or train gets full, they have a smile on their face. They're not offended. And here is somebody who is used to space around him and not being pushed around, and suddenly you feel pushed around, and then you get very offended. So, is the feeling also a matter of conditioning? The feelings that we have, is it very much like thought, only it's unworded thought? Krishnamurti says, for instance, the children come to school conditioned at the age of 3, he has said in one place. Now, in the home, the child figures out very quickly who holds power, whom you can speak to rudely, whom you cannot speak to rudely, whom you can take for granted, whom you can't take for granted. The child figures it out very quickly, right? It's completely non-verbal. But it doesn't mean that it's not real. It's very real. I don't know if I've addressed that question. Why? you want.
Yes, sir. Suddenly
Following
got
up
me
with something.
thinking. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Next, Nitin, would you like to ask the question directly?
Yes,
Nitin?
yes, yes.
Yeah,
Thanks,
yeah,
thanks.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sir, thanks for bringing in this contemporary perspective, because this, I hope I can be heard.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
yes.
Yes. So this contemporary perspective of AI, and though my question is not dealing with that, I feel that it is very important to realize, as you said, realize this algorithm which is embedded within us, the entire pattern which is embedded within us, and emotions, thoughts, feelings, all are party to that, in the sense they are working towards that algorithm. And we realize also many times that this algorithm is acting on us rather than we understanding about it. So how to really challenge this algorithm? Because uh, when we're talking about uh, the outward things, okay, we understand that intellectually, but the simple things, that my reactions are to a particular person are uh, you know of a kind, and my reaction to another person is of another kind. So and it comes so naturally that I sometimes, after that event, I realize that that it is so hardwired in me. So many times challenging the outward things is easier than challenging this inward, uh, this entire algorithm, the right word which in the modern context, algorithm. So how to really do that? How to really initiate that? Because that action, I think, taking that action is the first step.
I have been very interested and very engaged with the question, and I've been absolutely flabbergasted that Krishnamurti asked as early as 1983, what will you do when the machines take over? And therefore, I think it's a very serious question. It's a very deep and a serious question. I see the patterns which are my life. I see the involuntary patterns. For instance, the breathing is one of those things which you can stop for a little while. You have some control over it. But you can't do anything with the heart. The heart beats, the stomach digests, the involuntary patterns. And much of our conditioning is completely involuntary. It's not as if we have control over it. But we can grow aware of it. And we can grow aware of it posthumously. For instance, I've been very agitated by some interaction. Later on, when I'm calmly sitting somewhere, having a cup of tea or discussing somebody, I say, why did I get so agitated at that time? So this is a offline reflection. And then I will say I got irritated because of various reasons. The logic was unsound. But it may be more difficult to spot. I didn't like that person's face. It may be more difficult to discover that. Something in my being reacted to the way he was looking. Something in my way was reacting to the way he was sitting. He seemed to be sitting as if he was looking down his nose at me. Now, this may be more difficult to spot. And having spotted it, so if somebody is sitting in a certain way, then I have no control over how my consciousness responds to this, how the body's chemistry responds to this. You know, in today's time, I mean, it's been happening for the last 20, 30 years. Ralph Nader talks about how the enormous corporate world, mega corporations with billions of dollars, he said this already in 1997, are influencing children, They are telling them how they can live, and very subtle messages, subliminal messages which are passed on, the conditioning that's passed on. So it's very difficult to find out how this conditioning happens. Why I like pink color rather than green color. Why do I trust somebody who is ethnically similar to me than somebody who's ethnically different? It's very difficult to figure this out, but it's possible if you are very alert to catch this, to notice it. Right? And in some sense, algorithms have a basis. And the act of observation can put us in touch with that basis. Not to change it, not to be guilty about it, not to feel despondent, not to feel that you are a sinner or a criminal. But this is you. This is real life. This is what's operating in your life, in your consciousness. To notice that, to observe that as it is without trying to change it. So this is Krishnamurti's greatest gift. To notice it and to observe it without wanting to change it, without the desire even to change it. Normally you spot something instantly, the next second, the next instant, even millisecond. Our conditioning drives us to say, no, I should not be like this, I should be different. When he says, can you watch anger like a jewel? Can I know when I notice a pattern which is deep, that I do not like somebody's body language and it spoke to me very loudly about something and my system reacted to that. I've noticed this. Can I just notice it and be with it without doing anything about it? I think that restraint, that act of intelligent restraint, profoundly being with the fact of our own life, is possibly the only thing we can do. We recognize algorithms, we recognize they have assumptions, they have basis. And being in touch with it is probably the only thing we can do. And in that being in contact, possibly we discover another way of being. A way of being which is not, one is not at war with who one is. One is not also saying that one is completely without conditioning and one has learned everything that has been learned and one is an evolved soul. One is not saying that also. In the moment, in contact with the deep basis, the fundamental premises of what's moving in our life, what's motive in our life. I don't know if I've been clear. I hope I've tried to say something.
Very much, very much. And this also throws light on how we always want to change things. We want to always cure things. It is not necessary always to, as a reaction, you want to change something. So that also is not right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Nitin. With the permission of Mr. Rajendran, I would read out his question. Can one be conditioned by truth? Can one be conditioned by truth? This is the question.
There's a very beautiful saying, again from Krishnamurti. When somebody asks him, 1 minute, I'll just read this out. Can somebody be conditioned by truth, right? Somebody asks him,
right.
truth be so impotent? And he says, because truth has no action. Truth is weak. Truth is not utilitarian. Truth cannot be organized. It is like the wind, you cannot catch it. You cannot hold it in your fist and say, I have caught it. Therefore, it's tremendously vulnerable, impotent, like the blade of grass on the roadside. You can kill it, you can destroy it, but we want it as a thing to be used for a better structure of society. And I'm afraid you cannot use it. You cannot. It is like love. Love is never potent. It is there for you. Take it or leave it. I found this particular answer to this question remarkably. It has moved me very much. And I come back to this many times.
Thank you. The next question is from Sudeshna. I would read it out with your permission. In my daily life, everything that happens is recorded in memory, which sometimes produces emotions. Is this recording in memory a conditioning? Again, I would read that question. In my daily life, everything that happens is recorded in memory, which sometimes produces emotions. Is this recording in memory a conditioning? So this, I want to say something.
Yes,
Yeah.
actually, this is the question, but I'm facing this problem in real life. Something happened like a few days ago. I was walking in the road and two stray dogs were playing on their own, but they banged against me and I fell down. And there was a fear created. Now, after 2-3 weeks, also, whenever I see stray dogs, that thing is coming back. I'm feeling fearful, whereas others are not. So, in self-observation, I am understanding that this is because of the previous incident, but I cannot get to the root. Every time the fear is coming back, and I'm aware of it only after I'm fearful. So, is it? I'm just questioning this recording of memory. Is it a conditioning or is it natural? Or why can't I get to the root of it? Partly you have answered it in the previous question, that is alertness, but still I want to put myself in front of you. Yeah, this recording of every.
I think Krishnamurti made this suggestion. Can we die to yesterday? I mean, there is a memory. You have had an interaction, and if you put it in biochemical terms, when you are suddenly surprised by a dog banging against your leg and making some noise, there is instinctive fear. But fear is also a generation of chemicals. Let's not forget, the body reacts biochemically. And research shows that this chemistry takes a while to settle down, 12 to 36 hours. And the body's homeostasis is established again. So it's natural, something happened, something frightened me. Somebody jumped to frighten me from behind the door in the dark and said, boo, and I got frightened. It's the same thing, it's not very different. The whole body's response is there. Then, but I make it is a memory. Oh, that dog was like that day. But next day, I carry that fear. That's what you're saying. But isn't that very similar to what I do with my colleagues, my friends, my family members? I have a disagreement with my son, my wife, my husband, or my colleague for some trivial matter, okay, or some very deep, profound matter, like which is better, Buddhism or Hinduism. I'm joking, okay. I have a disagreement, and I engage with this person again the next day. What do? Do I make a formula out of it? Am I deeply concerned that I don't carry yesterday into today? Will I be able carefully listen to this human being the next day. As a teacher, let me tell you, this is the biggest gift and a challenge for a teacher. You have all kinds of interaction with your children. Somebody will be disrespectful, somebody will be yawning in your class, somebody will be so bored that they'll want to go to the toilet, somebody will laugh at an inappropriate moment. Then what will you do? Next day you come, you will brand that child with your impression. Because I don't know how to do anything else. That's what I'll do with the adult. But the teacher's moral imperative is that you give each child fresh attention every day. You don't condemn the child in your mind. It doesn't matter what he was yesterday. Can I listen to the child with the same care and attention as I would listen to another child who has not created those problems? You follow? So this is a very, very fundamental thing. If we don't know how to die to yesterday, we have no choice but to carry on. It doesn't matter what else you do. I mean, with family members, with friends, I'll be carrying this all the time. Is it okay if I have a cup of tea while I'm talking? Is that all right? Allowed?
Allowed, of course, and yes.
My tea has arrived, you know.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Thank you. Yeah. So the next question is from Sanjay. We will take two more questions from the chart, then we will go to Samal Rauji. Then we will come back to the chart if you have time. The Sanjay is asking, please elaborate logic and reasoning conditioning.
Okay, so you're talking about how you see, many times people are saying things which are not there in the words that they're saying. If we latch on to the word, we catch something. But if you listen beyond the words, you hear the whole story. And I'm saying logic to say this is what you said, this is what it means, this is how I understood it, is limited. You know, it is easy. I give you an example in what Sudeshna's question that she asked. It would have been very easy to just stay with the dog and the fear, big feelings. But actually the question she's asking has a much deeper realm for me. And to connect to it, I had to bring in other elements. So if people are saying something, it is for the listener to understand, to make contact with the other human being. And logic can be a terrible trap. It's a safe zone. I can always say you said this. No. We resort to this very often. So that's how I meant, sir, when I mentioned.
Thank you. Subhendu Patnaik is asking, isn't transformation just a thought, an idea? Why is it concerning us so much? Is it because K has mentioned that word? And because K used that word, the word must be important?
Yeah. I think the question contains the answer within itself. So I'm not going to say anything more about it. We've already discussed this.
Yeah.
You know, the fact is that in the world, 5,000 years of recorded history, you have seen human beings who function differently, who seem to have something which is missing. And people don't know what to do with this. So they say this person's consciousness is transformed, but I would like to There is this famous story of Dattatreya. I don't know if you have heard this story. Dattatreya, very remarkable ancient saint. And one day a king was going along on an elephant and a full entourage. And here Dattatreya was lying under a tree in the shade of the afternoon, under the afternoon sun, and with one leg folded over the other, and he was laughing away at the sky. The king goes past, and then something bothering him. This man seems to have something, and he sends his minister. He says, "Go find out who his teacher is." So the minister goes there to find out who is this teacher. That man doesn't answer him at all. He says, "My king, I don't know who your teacher is. Will you tell me?" He continues to laugh. Then he comes and tells the king, "This is a madman. Leave him alone. He doesn't know why. He is simply laughing." The king says, "No. He says, I see something on his face which is so special." So he gets off the elephant. He goes up to meet this man with folded hands. He says, "The look of peace which I see on your face, I would like to have. Can you tell me who's your teacher? Who guided you in this way?" And Dattatreya's answer is a very famous answer. He says, "I have 64 gurus. Which guru shall I tell you about?" I mean, you can read his little book called Avadhuta Gita. It's a beautiful song. Oh, little book, Avadhuta Gita, the translation is available in English. So, I think it's natural if you see something beautiful, or if you find a consciousness which is radiant, which seems to function with a different set of, to ask, what shall I do? That seems natural. To ask, I would like to live my life like this. I would like to find out what this is all about. But are we willing to give our life to it? We may discover it, we may not, we don't know. As Krishnamurti says, you can open the windows. That's much you can do. When the breeze will blow, you can't say when it's going to happen. So in that state of humility, are we still willing to walk that road? These are profound questions. And he talks about how there's something very sacred and it has been there. Yeah.
Thank you. Samal Rauji, yeah, you can go ahead with your question.
Thank you so much. Namaste, sir. Thank you for the brilliant explanation. It's not muted.
You're muted.
Got muted. Okay, muted. Thank you very much. And I have unmuted, sir. Sir, namaste. Thank you for the brilliant exploration of case teaching in this last session. I was thinking of some of the words that you spoke in the earlier discussion. I shall try to put them to the extent I can remember or I can recollect. It went like this, quote, "Can we be in conversation today as if it has happened long ago? Or can we be in conversation that happened long ago as if we are having it today?" As I understand, sir, mind has the capacity of time stamping everything up and building up further from there on. Why only this conversation? Any event for that matter gets time stamped by the mind. So in this background, may I request you to elaborate this particular observation of conversation and this time? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Beautiful, beautiful question. Let me see if I can say some more things. I don't know if I can explain it fully or whatever way in the best cogent fashion, but I'll try and say some things. You see, when we are in conversation, people are there in front of you. We are together. There's a context in which we are in conversation. Today, our conversation is happening in the post-COVID, between the third and the fourth waves of COVID. It's happening in the early part of 21st century. It is also a conversation in eternal time. We are asking questions which are very deep, which are as deep as they can get. And people probably have asked these questions centuries ago. It's too easy to assume that we are the first ones to be discussing this. So such questions have been discussed by others and they have come upon their own insights. They have found words to express the insights they had in their journey. They have found probably something like that. And we are in this conversation today. It is easy to say there is nothing new to be discovered. People have already discovered, people have already understood. But that is also to kind of trivialize this opportunity that you and I have of being alive in this planet at this time and with a consciousness which is raising some questions, which is encountering some questions. Even if we are not raising it ourselves, our friends are raising it and it has come to my notice, I have to meet that question. What does it mean to live a transformed life? What is this thing called transformation? What do I do with conditioning? These questions have come up. And conversation is an opportunity to do this together. This is again an extraordinary gift that Krishnamurti left us. If you look at ancient times, dialogues have happened in different places, in different contexts. But Krishnamurti is probably the only one who said that you can do this together. In that conversation with Bohm, he talks about how there's a question and we discuss it back and forth. And finally, there's neither you nor me, only the question. What an extraordinary statement. That actually in the course of a dialogue, an intense, earnest, simple conversation, that something can emerge which can't be planned, which is not deterministic. But there is such a possibility. So conversation is an opportunity for two minds or more minds to meet together. It's an openness in an explorative frame without any sense of coercion, any sense of pressure, any sense of accomplishment being reward being promised at the end of that. There's not a business discussion at the end of which you can put a signature and say QED.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm afraid that we are running short of time. There are a few more questions in the chat box. Gautam, with your permission, we would like to send all the other questions from the chat box to you. At your convenience, please, if it is possible, then do address these questions. And we will circulate it among the participants. So the questions are from...
What you're saying is the synchronous meeting ends here. Now we'll take it into asynchronous zone. Okay, fine.
So Sudhir Sarma has asked a beautiful question. Eric has in fact asked a wonderful question that is to you, and you are the right person to answer that about heart and how to open a new Krishnamurti center. I mean, related to heart in opening a new Krishnamurti center. Siva Kumar has asked.
Clarify that a little bit. My memory of that conversation is that I said, are there people who are willing to give their life to this? Somebody who is willing to be in that center and not just kind of facilitate it and help organize it, but willing to stand there with everything that's happening. And the person comes with the right kind of feeling. Krishnamurti has talked about this. He said, if you have that feeling, you can have a small school, you can open it in your backyard. You don't begin with the organization, but begin with the... And I remember at that time, Mr. Patnaik was there and he was very keen that we could have a school in Orissa and we could get land and everything.
Yes.
But somebody must stand up and say, yeah, I'll take this up and go ahead and meet all the challenges that come. and be willing to face it, be willing to meet it. And I see this as meaningful in my life. And I'm willing to do this. And then the center will grow slowly. The school can grow. And the school in the 21st century is fantastic. We are already having a crisis. One of the things about Pathshala is that we have got only 120 students here. And now we are noticing that the larger schools are having difficulties. And we probably relationship is at the heart of things. Pathshala is built around something called the Dunbar's number, 150. Everybody knows everybody in Pathshala. So there is relationship, the people meeting, there's enough rubbing shoulders, enough conversation. Maybe the whole direction of education with this internet and everything else, with all schools having gone online, we are asking the question for schools is what is relationship? What are we offering the young? What spaces are we offering where they can understand themselves and figure out how they should lead their life? It's no longer just a matter of subjects. So it's a great opportunity. If people in Orissa would like to start a small school of that kind, I'll be the first person to support you. I think we can do a great deal. We need such schools. In fact, we are thinking in Pathshala that we will support 8 to 10 schools. If they want to do that, we'll help their teachers, we'll give them morphology. If they're interested, they can take it forward whichever way they want. We see the need for human-sized schools where the human beings matter. We see great need for this. So that was just an elaboration. Sorry, I've spoken too long.
That was wonderful. And Nandini, yeah, please.
Okay. Thank you, Gautama. Thank you very much for the talk and all the questioners and the silent listeners. I would like to thank all of you. And particularly, you brought some of the topics which are close to heart. And you said that technology is actually killing the art of discovery. The instant accomplishment, the instant answering, everything is provided by the technology. So discovering is slowly dying out. And another thing I really liked when you brought up this idea of, because after the break, we are going to go into the discussions. So you said, can there be a dialogue or a discussion as though for the first time, which means not talking from the conditioning, from the loads of conditioning, but talking as we are seeing something right in front of the eyes. This is a wonderful thing, and this is going to help us as we start our dialogue group discussions after the break. Thank you very much, Gautama, once again.
Thank you. So I will take leave of you now. I will not join you.
Yeah. No, you can take leave. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Okay. Again, thanks. And now I would request Soumya to say a few words.
Thank you, friends. Like everything else, this conclave also is ending right now, as everything must end. And one wonderful thing that, of course, Gautama explained is, Gautamana, that it has taken the frontiers out of the equation. And people from, the local has become global. It's not KFI Cuttack Center, it is all K participants here. And, when I was young, I used to go to temples and I visited churches. And we always, after we surrender ourselves to the deity, we come back with pouches. Sometimes the pouches of offerings, pouches of blessings. And here in this conclave, we never promised any such reward. And probably the only pouch that we can leave with is a pouch of self-inquiry. That's the only take away from this pouch of self-inquiry we can carry with us. We listened to Mark, to Professor K, to Gautamana. We're extremely thankful to them. They represent a commitment of life to the teachings. And in them, they represented a life of simplicity, a life of humility. Probably we listen to that intently. We also listen to ourselves through this dialogue. And probably we heard our noises. And probably we saw our noises. There is no running away from it, no escape from it. And if this conclave made us see them, through this 10 hours journey that we did together, have some meaning. I thank all of you for sparing your time with us, despite the festive season that this conclave interfered with, like Christmas and a weekend. That shows all of us our commitment to this process, to this journey. And can we give more to it? I thank my colleagues from Cuttack Center. Nandini, of course, most of you know. She is as committed as anyone else in this process. Soumitra, you have seen him, you have heard him. He also is fully committed to this process. We have others like Kavita, Chita, Manasi, Sashank. All of us were here in various times. And they all contribute their best to the center in various processes of case dissemination, be it a book, publishing books, writing books, selling books, conducting study centers, programs, dialogues, and everything. It's a lifelong commitment for everybody. And I will take this opportunity to invite any of you who is visiting Odisha, please visit Cuttack Center. It has got a beautiful study center, and it has got a small kind of retreat facility where, COVID permitting, you can come and stay there. It is by the river Karjodi. It's a beautiful place. You can always contact Soumitra to make arrangements. The place and you will understand each other much more better. Of course, K, as I understand, is not a localized process. Wherever we are, we can contribute to the process, contribute to ourselves. It is self that needs inquiry. I'll just finish with a quote from J.K. Patnaik, whose name has been dropped here, who committed his entire life and donated his entire resources anonymously for the dissemination of case teachings. He not only set up Cuttack Center, he set up Calcutta Center. He has donated all his life's earnings to the cause of dissemination of case teachings. When I first met him, Nandini and I wanted to donate something, and I wanted to donate for an ambulance in a hospital. And I asked him, is it the right way to go? And he said, any donation for the mankind is very, very is worth it. There is no problem. But remember one thing: what is the problem with the world, the mind or the body? He indirectly told me the whole world is suffering from mindlessness. Be attentive to it. Thank you so much for participating. KFI Cuttack Center is obliged to all of you. See you next time.